What's going on, everybody? Wildman Wes here, and welcome to the Worst State of Movies, where we take 50 movies that were made in the United States, and we decide whether or not they are deemed worthy of the title for being the worst movie made in each state. You know the drill. Let's get in that whirly bird and see where we go next. We now venture to the state of Nevada, home of Las Vegas, a city of bright lights, lots of casinos, and many nightclubs for dancing. You probably had an idea that this movie was eventually going to be on this list. That's right, folks. Today we're going to be talking about 1995's Showgirls.
Absolutely frightening.
This movie has definitely gotten a lot of flack for a lot of different reasons, and we're going to talk about it right now. The movie starts off with a young girl named Nomi who is from the wrong side of town trying to make it to Las Vegas to be a big showcase nightclub dancer. She is beautiful.
And bad.
And we see this when she's picked up by a man named Jeff, and he takes her to Vegas, bragging that his uncle owns a club and he can help her out. It turns out he's full of crap, he steals her stuff, and leaves her hanging. Well, Nomi meets a young girl named Molly who is a costume designer for a lot of the Vegas showgirl events and performances. They build up a bond and a friendship where Molly starts taking Nomi around, where she meets the diva, the all-star dancer in Las Vegas, Crystal Connors. She is the biggest diva, does not like having to compete with anybody, notices Nomi does have talent, however, wants to give her that "so you want to be a dancer, kid" situation, especially because Nomi being green and not knowing much, she feels disheartened. She goes with Molly to a nightclub where they start dancing, and she gets into an altercation with a bouncer, gets arrested, gets bailed out by a man named James who was at the nightclub that night and wanted to teach her how to dance. They start forming a little bit of a bond. She starts learning a little bit of her craft. She starts working at a gentleman's club where she is dancing rather provocatively, dealing with a boss who is not the greatest person in the world, and she decides she wants to try to audition for the big showcase performances on the Las Vegas Strip. When she gets a part as part of the chorus or the ensemble, she realizes she is also part of the show that Crystal is involved with. She also meets a man named Zach, who is one of the side producers who has a little bit of a physical relationship with Crystal. Eventually, Nomi gets a little bit of that physical relationship with Zach. Crystal's not pretty happy about that, I'll tell you that much. As time goes on, Crystal wants to really betray Nomi into thinking that Crystal is actually wanting to be friends with Nomi and sending her off to a couple different venues and locations and hotel rooms to meet with people in the industry where things that could go wrong do go wrong. Nomi eventually has sick and tired of Crystal's shenanigans and, for lack of a better term, takes her out of commission, so then Nomi takes the star spot in the production. When another producer comes in and wants to speak with Nomi, Nomi brings her friend Molly along, and let's just say the producer does something to Molly that I really have to tread lightly on in this review because I don't want to get flagged. Molly ends up in the hospital. I'm just going to leave it at that. Nomi gets her revenge on it and decides she is done with doing dancing in Vegas and she wants to go somewhere else. As she's leaving Vegas, she is once again picked up by Jeff, and she gives him his comeuppance for stealing her stuff. That's pretty much the movie in a nutshell. I could go on, but there is a lot of things in this movie that are very uncomfortable, I would say. Not necessarily for you, the viewers. Me personally, as a reviewer, Alright, I'm going to focus on this real quick. We're going to talk about things I don't like and I don't like. When it comes to things, when it's not necessarily that I don't like, it's not on the situation of I hated the situation. It reminded me of some things from years ago that I witnessed firsthand. For those of you that have been playing the home game for a while and have gotten to know me for over the years, I actually was a DJ at a gentleman's club out here in the Quad Cities back in 2008, right before I moved to Indianapolis. And I did see quite a bit of things. I'm not going to tell you which gentleman's club it was. All I can say is they're no longer around. But moving back into the film, there are those moments where there's this boss at a gentleman's club who is taking a lot of liberties with his employees to the point where it's harassment at its worst. Like I said, I am very uncomfortable talking about this right now because I start wondering why in the world did I do DJ work at a gentleman's club and have money. I'm not dogging all gentlemen's clubs. There are some that are fairly well established where there's a lot of respectable business, but that's beside the point. This movie feels like an NC-17 version of two movies put together, Dirty Dancing and Staying Alive. Obviously, Dirty Dancing in the early 80s, we had a man working at a huge resort, meets a young girl, teaches her how to dance, and the rest is history on that one. Y'all know the story. I'm pretty sure you do. Staying Alive, probably not as much. That's one of those forgotten films that John Travolta was in that was a sequel to Saturday Night Fever, where he is a dancer and now he is in one of these big showcase performances, and a lot of what happens in Showgirls is very reminiscent to Staying Alive. And in this situation, I feel that this movie was more of the woman's perspective as opposed to the man's perspective. And bringing that up, it's not necessarily saying that I hate that part. A lot of it's interesting because they do have some parallels and they also cross paths into different directions. So it's a nice little vortex of ideas. Ideas sounds like a good way to end that topic. Of course, with a movie being about showgirls or dancers in Vegas, there's fan service in this movie. Plus, the movie was NC-17, so if the movie's NC-17, you're gonna see quite a bit of fan service. And not only that, I feel that this movie definitely relied too much upon fan service when not needed, and also relying upon suggestive jokes when it was supposed to be a serious moment or serious scenes in the film. They throw a lot out there, especially one scene where Crystal and Nomi are sitting down having like brunch or whatever, and Crystal makes a comment about her body, a specific part of her body, and says how much she likes it, and she asks Nomi, what about you? Do you like them or having big? And she says, I like having nice who am I kidding? I'm just gonna say it, boobies. We're just gonna say boobies. Yeah. If you thought my reviews on Battlefield Earth and Heaven's Gate were a little bit awkward, this one tops them all. I will talk about what I like as well, because there are some things that really make me appreciate the film for what it is. The cast alone does what they can. You do have Elizabeth Berkley straight off of doing things from Saved by the Bell. We have legendary actor Robert Davi. For those of you that have never heard of Robert Davi, watch movies like License to Kill, The Goonies. He was one of the who's who of 80s bad guys in films, and he does a damn good job in this one playing a very lecherous nightclub owner. Of course, we can't forget the gruesome twosome of Zach and Crystal Connors, played by Kyle MacLellan and Gina Gershon. They do a very good job playing that slightly open relationship or just a situationship to a T, and also just that triangle between Gina, Kyle, and Elizabeth Berkley makes you wonder what exactly is going to go on down the line when the betrayal is discovered, or when people find out that Nomi took out Crystal physically by knocking her down a flight of stairs so she could take the helm of the star of the show. It does leave you on your seat, even if some of the acting can be a little dry. It's not horrible, it's just very dry. Now that I've gotten that all out of the way, it is time to grade this film. As I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, Showgirls has gotten a lot of flack, a lot of heat, and a lot of just negative reviews from a lot of people. And I understand why. There are a lot of things in this movie that are bland. There are things in this movie that are dry. There are things in this movie that will make you facepalm and groan. But there are those things that make you uncomfortable. And I'm wondering if that deep down is the core reason why a lot of people don't really give this movie enough credit. And as someone, as I mentioned, from working in the industry as a DJ, I have seen it firsthand, and it struck a nerve with me. It really did. And it makes me want to go back and see if there were things that I missed, even if it makes me feel uncomfortable, or get a better perspective of a dancer's point of view of what they've had to experience in their time in the industry. With that being said, Showgirls, you're alright. You are alright. Well, we hope you enjoyed this quick review on Showgirls from 1995. If you've seen this movie and you agree with me, leave a thumbs up. And if not, I totally understand. If there are things about this movie you really didn't care for, put it in that comment section below. If there are things that you really liked, or maybe agree with me on some of the insight that I, as a reviewer, noticed, put it in the comment section below. I'm really interested to see what all of you have to say when it comes to movies that you like and don't like. Because we're not always going to agree on what's the best movies and what's the worst movies. Also, make sure you share on social media, but most importantly, push that subscribe button and ring the bell for instant updates. Until then, I'm Wildman Wes, and we will see you next time on the worst state of movies, or some of the other stuff that we have here on Dragonfire Entertainment. Take care, and as always, thanks for watching.